Correct. I suppose because we produce stuff in the factory, the guys that we have on site are minimum. So a typical crew for us would be 4 guys and a supervisor. So, and them 4 guys will put in the region of 3 to 4 houses up a week of frames. Obviously the house has got to be finished. So we don't need lots of guys on site to put up our product.
Guys from the factory to the field.
Yes, yeah, all the time, depending on. So I suppose the whole thing with a manufacturing business, we're a bit of a high. We are precise manufacturing, but we deal with site, and site changes constantly. So we have a planned manufacturing facility dealing with sites. So sometimes, because of issues in terms of we mightn't be able to get the guys we want. So we have trained guys within our factory facility that will go to site and install the product. It's not their job. Their main job is to manufacture product, but sometimes we utilise that depending on how busy we are.
Just one final question again to Ger. So you're just building the steel frame itself. You're not building the composite.
Correct. What we do is we build the steel frame, but we do certain things to it. So if you think of a 2-story house, we'll build the structure of the 2-story house, so which is the steel frame. We'll insulate it. We'll put specific grounds on the panel to take your external facade. We can do certain fire stopping. We can do cavity closing. We can put roofs on it. So it really depends. What we don't do is we don't do the finishes. So i.e. the M&E within a building, the external facade, your brickwork is done by someone else, and your boarding within the building.
Yeah, like we would have been involved in a project many years back under Fusion, isn't it?
That's it.
In Waterford Castle, delivering I think 48 or 58 houses, and that was 12 years ago when we did that project, and that was a very successful project, and the houses are holding out very well, and it was a great project.
That was a logistically challenging one because it was on an island.
It was on an island, yeah.
Yeah. So we had to physically get the frames on the little ferry that went to the island.
Exactly.
So it was but it again the right thing, the right product on that was offsite, because you were getting 2 units on a truck to go to site that had to be ferried over, as opposed to X amount of trucks for traditional. So it worked.
Excellent, thank you. You had a question? Yeah, John.
A question for Deborah and for Ger. I'm looking at and the others if they want to jump in. I'm looking at this space that's been used to do the prefabrication. In some ways it looks like an assembly shop. I mean, I'm interested in knowing what is the degree of, say, a CAD/CAM connection to do cutting, do forming, and actually produce product that is actually at what I would describe as manufacturing tolerances as opposed to construction tolerances. And is it economical to push that far?
I think it's economical to push that far, and there's quite large teams in the factory that do all that precision engineering to make that a viable protection.
Exactly. I suppose everything that we do is driven by design, but it's also driven by CNC coding. So if we see guys in our factory for cutting steel, we have a problem, because the machines produce everything from the design file. Right? Sometimes it happens, we have to be real, but everything is produced from a design file, and a CNC code is sent to the machine. So the machine will punch the holes, it'll punch the service holes, it'll create the lengths of the studs, and it's accurate to a 0.01 of a millimeter. So if the frames are not fitting together, it's not the machine, it's the design that was done on it. So it's a very, very precise production facility, and we don't see guys out there with angle grinders. If we do, we have a problem.
And just as a follow-on, what about the actual base on which this is being erected? What quality control have you to do on that to ensure that your product, which is a millimeter tolerance, how is that made?
It's a challenge all the time, because again, as I said before, you're dealing with a very, very precise product, and you're dealing with site. So the tolerances on the base are critical to us, and we look for plus or minus 5 mil on a base. Do we always get it? No. that we can overcome some tolerance differences, but we don't want to be doing that, because if we're starting to do that, then you're getting cold bridges, you're getting airtight issues. But again, that's really down to we want to drive the quality through to the main contractor, and that's why we like working with the same main contractor. So what we try to get a main contractor on board, and you know what, between both of us then we work together to get that quality from our factory, our manufacturing facility, right to site. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and that's the nature of where we are.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, yourself.
One of the observations on modular is that in terms of the design process, the specialist design from the modular suppliers comes in at the very end of the process, and it seems from the aesthetic and from the projects that are being delivered that there's opportunities are lost there. Whereas if you were designing or master planning the project knowing that it was going to be modular, perhaps it would have a very different aesthetic, that it would be very streamlined, very robust, very simple, very clean. And it just seems that the industry, when you look at the examples of projects, they're probably not the ideal design for modular. And I'd be interested just to hear the views on what the perfect typology is for offsite modular.
That's a really good question. We get drawings over all the time by architects, and they think, oh, will that work in modular? And it doesn't always work. So they have to be redrawn again. So for us, we like to start right from the red line drawing and get the architects on board at an early stage. So that way we know we design it specifically for modular, and we don't try and take it from traditional and then make it modular, because that's where you have the problems.
But it's also a culture change.
Yeah.
It's at the moment you hit the nail on the head really. We're trying to make traditional designs work in modular. The holy grail for me as an offsite manufacturer is to have early involvement. We never get it. We very rarely get it, because the client will not commit at that stage. So what happens is the design team will design the building, possibly as traditional or whatever, and then from a possibly a value engineering point of view, the client will go out and look for an alternative. We always want to be involved early, because we can value engineer what. So that's exactly where we need to go. It's not happening in Ireland. We get involved when we get a design. So even at the very start, when we get stuff to price, we get a traditional design in, and we price it on that, and we make it work, as opposed to the total opposite way, which is the right way.
In the UK now, the government they're giving out like sites, Homes England, and I've been helping them design some sites. So that's what we do. We do early engagements, because otherwise it's not cost effective to try and switch it up at the end. And plus, they're trying to encourage architects now to maybe do 2 sets of drawings where they have traditional and modular, and then we won't have that problem by trying to switch it over later on, because it's nearly impossible to try and price it all.
But Ian, can you comment on that? Having to do 2 sets of drawings?
Yeah, no, I suppose I'm an architect, and I kind of relate to that. Like, we do lots of housing schemes across the country, and we're now looking at obviously designing some of these housing schemes to a modular methods of construction in terms of the widths of the blocks that they need to be done. But you have to do from, like, you can't design a housing scheme and then go, okay, we're going to do the modular. It just doesn't work. We've done it. We've priced up schemes in Wexford and Tipperary and so on with other companies who do modular systems in Ireland, and it just wasn't cost effective. Like traditional was still more cost effective, but that's because it wasn't designed for a modular system.
Sorry.
Construction. Are you okay?
Fine, I won't say you're
Exactly. So So what we're doing is there's a few housing schemes we're working at the moment, and we're designing specifically for modular methods, and that's the only way to do it really. Like, and it's getting that out to. I suppose a lot of times when you take on a client, a lot of clients are maybe thinking of flipping the site and moving the site on, so they're just looking at how many units can I get in there, and make sure to keep the planners happy, get it through the system. You know, they're not necessarily thinking about like, okay, how am I going to build this? Then you've got other clients who are a bit more thinking about how I'm going to deliver this, how I'm going to sell it best value, and so on. And they're the type of clients that we would sit down at early and discuss from straight off and saying, do you want to go full volumetric or part modular construction on this, or do you want to go traditional? And normally get QSs to kind of price it out at that stage.
And that's where the Gateshead Innovation Zone, which is a perfect example of bringing all of that together. Because that's looking at traditional, at modern. Home Group are driving it, but they're bringing key partners in place. So they have a number of design teams from different organisations involved. Homes England are also involved in that as well, because they want to use that as proof of concept and say, right, what works well, and then go live commercially into the marketplace to develop that and scale.
John had a question there.
Just so that I'm clear about this, what I'm actually hearing here is that modular can actually match traditional if it's actually specifically designed. If the project is designed to be modular, but that if it goes the other way, in other words, if it has been designed traditionally and it's just given out to people who do modular building, it probably won't work. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, well, like, you know, as I said to you, when we're talking about modular, like there's lots of different systems like that you can use, you know. So some are more flexible than others, you know. Like Horizon would be a more flexible system than obviously if you're going a volumetric system. Because this company that we're kind of working with in the UK, who I showed you there, I pronounced their name, Ilk Homes, they're called, and they have basically their module that you buy into. They have the floor plan, like so, you know, if we're going to them, you're picking off a catalogue what houses you want to put into development, and there may be some kind of tolerances within the design, but it's fairly fixed. But they're going in that route because they can get the efficiencies, and you're buying off their kind of tested designs. So in the cases that we've seen it is that it's sometimes you know you can't mix and match that easily, right? And only like in where I think in Dublin where the price of construction is higher, you know it can kind of balance out a bit. But once you go outside Dublin, you know we see it at the moment is traditional methods are still kind of slightly cheaper or certainly on par, like with modular methods.
Yeah, I suppose from our point of view, you're right in one sense. When the Horizon system really comes into its own from about 2 stories to about 8, and that's our niche market. Sometimes below 2 stories, sometimes we will struggle a little bit to compete. But I suppose the issue we have probably from a cost point of view is getting the whole system assessed. So assessing the overall product as opposed to just a like for like square meter rate. So assessing the program savings, assessing you've got borrowed money that needs to be repaid. So a full assessment of the cost. But being very honest, sometimes on 2-story units, depending if the client wants to build a lot of units very quickly, we're very, very competitive. Yeah. But if the client wants to build a unit a week, he's going to use traditional. And again, but where we really excel is 2-story, 3-story, 4-story, 5-story. Dublin sites, wherever, apartments, getting in, getting out, they're apartments, they're commercial, people want to build as quick as possible, to the highest quality possible, and off the site.
I think in part answer to your question as well, if you look at what the likes of the big contractors have done in this space, Cisco and BAM, they're not investing themselves internally, they're actually acquiring. So Cisco obviously have bought Vision Builds, BAM's taking a stake in MHI because that's where they see the expertise is to deliver. And it'd be great to have, we keep repeating myself, but early engagement, stakeholder involvement. It would be great to get the big contractors that are actually, they're investing in these companies as well and bringing everybody together to kind of put pressure on strategy and policy here. and build it into the housing strategy here and direct it that part of this should be earmarked for offsite as a solution.
Yeah.
And again, it is only part of the solution. We all agree it's not going to be a full solution.
Thank you.
Question here?
Lang O'Rourke's are really involved in this in the UK, aren't they? It'd be great if they could do some modular housing or build in here. But the question I want to ask Chair is about energy rating of the modular. Like, can you build a house to NSAP regs with?
Yeah, I suppose we can build it to the specification.
Yeah.
So we keep harping on it. That all comes back to early involvement.
Yeah.
So specific U values, we can achieve them. Specific earth tightness ratings, we can achieve them. Specific Y values, psi values, all achievable. The whole system is modelled. But again, that's all about the design phase.
Yeah.
So if we know at design phase that this is the way it needs to go, the house is designed to that. So it's early involvement. And early involvement might mean you might save money on certain things where we'd be very good at junction detail. You might need such a good window. You might need a U value on your wall you might get away with. So it's early involvement which could value engineer your building. But we can. Really we build to specification. So whatever the spec is, we build to it.
Excellent. There's more question there at the back, yeah?
Professor John there, you mentioned, say, working with all class and being complementary. Have you been in discussions with, say, the Agmont certification process with the NSAI?
Just before I answer that, is there anybody here from the NSAI? Secondly, we have tried to engage with them. That's all I can say. And we have tried, but I could talk to you separately. But yeah.
Challenges. Okay.
Yes, to say the least.
Yeah. The question, yeah.
I think it's a question for all of you. You briefly mentioned everybody touched, I think, being there now, and you mentioned skill shortage. Do you mind to share your opinion what kind of challenges you have in terms of being skill shortage, and maybe some of you can share what kind of technologies, stack technologies might be used to ensure that the design stage, the preparation, basically goes seamless.
Well, I suppose talking from a horizon point of view, the systems that we use are BIM compliant, so they're three-dimensional framing systems that can be imported to a BIM model, which is critical. That doesn't happen a lot in Ireland. It's starting to, but in Ireland at the moment, a lot of the design is 2D. It's not three-dimensional. But we have the systems that you can import the model, you can clash detect, you can punch holes in certain elements for services. So again, it's all back to getting that design going at an early stage to make sure that if you've got a service running through your floor, that there's a punch out in a joist for it. If you've got services running through your frames, that you just punches out from, that you're not drilling holes on site, because it's defeating the purpose with offsite if you're having to drill stuff and cut stuff on site. You should never be doing that. You should have no waste. Really, everything is done on your computer. So again, we would love guys to be asking us for our three-dimensional model. Some guys do, some guys don't.
I might answer in the context of what we're doing in the UK with UK government around digital transformation in construction. So there's a whole project going on at the moment called the Construction Innovation Hub in the UK. So part of that's digital transformation in construction, but it goes beyond construction, it goes into society and manufacturers. So us as a testing and certification body BIM, one of the biggest challenges in the construction sector is some of the data can be too complex and too complicated. So if you take a door or a window and you apply different software modules to it, it's different outputs, different characteristics. So it's trying to simplify that data in a building project is the challenge. So one of the things we're doing at its very early stages, and it's on our website, we've developed a thing called BIM Data Book, which will link into supply chain and construction blockchain. And that BIM Data Book will actually simplify that data. So whether you're using Rivet or CAD, you can actually use an API, plug in the software into that BIM Data Book to simplify the data on the installation panel, on the door or the window. So when you're looking from a verification screen, you can actually see what the key characteristics are that are relevant from a BIM perspective. I think if you look in Ireland, and again, I don't know if anybody here from CISC, I'm not here speaking for CISC, but They'd be an example of a contractor who do really good projects using BIM, and a perfect example is Centre Parks in Longford. And they've made very public about this. When they went to tender for that, it was the first time that they actually used BIM modelling in Centre Parks across the UK and Ireland. But not only was it delivered on time, it was delivered on budget. And using BIM modelling drove that. So I think Centre Parks have now actually reviewed how they go through tender and maybe engage in more BIM modelling as part of their projects. That's a great example of BIM working and collaboration.
Yeah, and I suppose in our architectural business, obviously, BIM using Rivet it's just upskilling, I suppose, the older kind of staff in our office into it, because what we find is a lot of the younger people who are coming through all know how to use all the software, but they don't necessarily have the knowledge, right? So it's interfacing kind of the experienced kind of seasoned kind of architects in our office with the younger kind of architects coming through, and making that work. But I think over time, you know, it is becoming just, you know, standard, and people are just buying into it because that's the way the industry is going, and everybody's buying into it. So we would have started this back probably, I don't know, maybe nearly 15 years ago when we got the first kind of license in our office. But it took a long time for it to be really kind of taken on board with our staff. But it is like most buildings that we do would be done through Rivet. Yeah.
They were using BIM quite a lot, and we're part of the Innovation Hub now in the UK. So our project kicks off in April, working alongside BRE, and all our projects will be done with BIM, using the BIM model.
The issue of skills is very important in this area, as with any changes in any industry sector, and obviously the use of technology and digitalisation is a huge one. I'm interested in your views on what other skills are perhaps going to be needed in the future for people working in this field. Obviously the tools like technology are very important, but are there going to be different skills that are needed that are particularly relevant to modular construction, like perhaps project management, or a different kind of way of collaborating in terms of virtual design? Or has anything come up in any of your organisations that you think, yeah, if only we had somebody who was skilled in X to help us with this? Is there anything?
I think the project management's important, because going from the factory to the site and you might be using different main contractors, you might not use the same main contractors depending on where your project is. So having that project manager that can liaise with the factory and the other teams as well is really important.
And I suppose even in terms of transport and logistics,
that's going to be key.
I would agree with that. The project managers in our business are very, very important, because like traditionally on site you would have a project manager on site, but really the guys we have are all encompassing. They really manage the project from handover to finish on site, even though they're not design managers. But they will manage the design process. They're not our operations guy, but they have to make sure that it's built to the plan. Yeah. So really, they're involved a lot more than they would be traditionally. Also, our design guys are critical to us. The right drafts people, and I suppose we're lucky, because I suppose when I worked with Fusion, we had lots and lots of guys, and everyone with Fusion had a really, really good experience, so it's easy enough to get these guys back into our business. So they're bringing a lot of experience. So really our critical guys are our design team and our project managers that will take the project from initial stage right to the end.
So yeah, I suppose a lot in the modular, you're solving a lot of issues out in the office rather than on site than on the traditional thing. So there's a lot more, it's more intense process at the beginning. You know?
Correct, yeah, and the planning is critical, because obviously with a manufacturing facility, that's got to keep going. If that ain't going, you have an issue. So your project manager planning the job and planning the slots.
It's critical. What about yourself, John?
I can, from a different angle, from a test and certification body. So one of the key things we mentioned is health and well-being and safety in a work environment and living environment. And there's a serious lack of fire engineers and fire engineering courses across the UK and Ireland. You might have, you've likes of Letterkenny, IT, Queen's University, Georgetown and Waterford. But it's a lack of fire engineers, and how you actually attract graduates into that area is key. I think from a legislative perspective, there's also a huge challenge here for local authorities in interpretation of legislation. So what I mean by that is whether you have a traditional high-storey building or a modular building in Cork may be signed off by the fire officer, and it's to the same building regulations. That same building may or may not be signed off by another local authority. And it comes down to interpretation, and we have come across on numerous occasions where the developer can show, here's a certification, here's a fire test report. So consistency in interpretation legislation, because each local authority has different views on the legislation. So to me a challenge would be as well, for example, from a fire safety perspective, why there would not be an overarching national fire authority to drive this from the very top down, which we don't have at the moment. And I don't know whether that falls within the remit of the National Building Control Office or would at government level.
So you've been talking about skills needed in project management, in design, in health and safety, in collaboration, in the computer digitalisation. It seems to me that half of the population could be trained up into that. The half of the population that currently is not traditionally involved in the construction sector. So I would put it out to everybody that there are key skills there that are needed that women perhaps don't know about, and let them know that this is a great industry to be in and that they can be involved in the future of the built environment. So I put that challenge out to everybody here today. And it sounds like from where you're coming from, you welcome more people coming in, you welcome women, you welcome men, but particularly women because they're not traditionally there at the moment. So.
And I think actually that goes back to secondary schools.
Yeah, it goes back to primary nearly.
Yeah, and like my daughter is doing architecture technology in a boys' school because they didn't have the modules to do that in the girls' school. Yeah. So if you want to encourage where there's more women or whatever in society to come along into this, it has to go back to secondary school and below.
Yeah. And Engineers Ireland are doing a lot of work here with that.
Correct.
We've time for just one more question, perhaps. Anybody has another question? Oh, we have two. Okay, should go back to you here.
We talked about the manufacturing process and the off-site and modular be manufacturing process. So what is being learned from manufacturing and being put into this sector, like in terms of product provenance, traceability, supply chain management?
Correct, yeah, because I suppose as just from Horizon's point of view, everything is traceable because so we are CE marked, we are NSAI accredited. So it really what it does it makes your business a very lean business, because you can't have a factory that everything is thrown. It just doesn't work because you're assessed regularly. So what it does is it makes the business lean, which betters the margins, and that's exactly where we see it going. It also drives quality. So quality it's not, if quality within a factory, you don't automatically get it. You've got to have the right people, and you've got to drive it down really from the top. But when you do, it works, and you're getting a quality product to site. So really, from us, it's making our business very lean, and it's making the product that we supply very high quality. That's what manufacturing does for us.
Thank you. And a final question at back.
In my experience, the fire testing was required for off-site, they're both very well aware of the testing standards that exist at the moment. Any tests that are done for off-site are, the tests don't replicate what will actually be built. So particularly where you might have two walls side by side, you can only test one wall, for example, or if you have the floor and the ceiling, you can only test the testing that actually you need to check against. Will give you very, very honest results. So have you heard any rumblings or any talk of the testing requirements of the standards being changed to include anything for off-site as opposed to just more traditional construction?
I suppose just from a Horizon point of view, we've fire tested different elements of our system, but I suppose when we've tested them, we've tested them to real scenarios. So we've put services in them, we've loaded the panels. So it means we're not testing a non-load bearing panel without a service in it, because that's just not what happens on site. So it means, but it is stringent, because when we do a 30-minute test or a 60-minute test, that build-up is what you need to use. If you deviate from the build-up, you have an issue. So from our point of view, we're very stringent on specific wall build-ups that we've tested. It's always evolving. We're the example you said there, if you have a twin frame party wall, we've got a 60-minute test on a single frame, but we use it in twin wall. At the moment, that's the detail we use, and we don't have an issue with it.
I think at the BRE, the Innovation Centre in Watford, John will agree, they've got a big testing facility there for fire, and they've often put whole buildings in and just set them up and tested them.
Just to answer your question in relation to the specific standard, you mentioned fire. So part of that testing includes fire testing, wall rig, cladding, floor rig testing to British and European standards. Another key important element of it as well, which gets lost, is particularly for large scale production, is fire door installers. So we run what's called the LPCB scheme, Loss Prevention Certification Board. It's a globally recognised scheme. So as part of the BPS standard, you have to be a registered installer as part of the whole certification process. So hopefully that will address the issues over fire safety. We've already consulted with the Chief Fire Officer Association here with the standard as well, and getting their feedback on the technical contents document as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that. There'll be time afterwards, after we finish, to have a chat with some of the panelists. But for the moment, I'd like to sincerely thank Deborah and Ger and John and Ian for their excellent presentations and for their engagement in the panel discussion today. Thank you very much.